The story of Adolf Hitler is a terrifying chronicle of how radical ideology can seize a desperate nation. Born in 1889 in Austria, Hitler's early life was marked by mediocrity and frustration. He dreamed of becoming an artist, but his applications to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts were rejected twice. This period of poverty and isolation solidified his deeply ingrained resentment and hatred towards certain groups. The outbreak of World War I provided him with a sense of purpose and belonging. He served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front, proving himself a diligent, if unremarkable, soldier. The German defeat in 1918 shattered his world and ignited his belief in the stab-in-the-back myth. He blamed communists, Jews, and corrupt politicians for Germany's humiliating surrender. In the chaos of post-war Munich, Hitler found an outlet for his political venom. He joined the tiny German Workers' Party, a fringe nationalist group, in 1919. His powerful, theatrical speaking style quickly distinguished him from his contemporaries. He molded the party, renaming it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSAP, or Nazis. The Nazi program promised national revival, revenge against Versailles, and the eradication of enemies. He created the Sturmabteilung, or brown shirts, as a paramilitary wing for political intimidation. By 1923, feeling bold, Hitler attempted a coup d'état, the infamous beer hall putsch. The coup failed within 24 hours. Hitler was arrested and charged with treason. His trial provided a national stage, which he masterfully used to spread his rhetoric. Sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg prison, he used the time to dictate his manifesto, Mein Kampf. This book laid out his horrific plan: racial purity, Lebensraum, living space, and world domination. Released after only 9 months, Hitler realized the path to power must be through legitimate politics. He reorganized the Nazi Party, focusing on grassroots campaigning and nationwide recruitment. The stable years of the mid-1920s offered the Nazis little opportunity for growth. But the catastrophic Wall Street crash of 1929 changed everything, plunging Germany into depression. Mass unemployment and political paralysis provided the perfect breeding ground for extremism. Hitler promised salvation, stability, and the restoration of German pride. The Nazis' electoral performance skyrocketed, becoming the second largest party by 1930. His rallies became spectacles of coordinated mass emotion, combining modern media with ritualistic fervor. The elderly and conservative President Hindenburg initially viewed Hitler with utter contempt. However, continuous political deadlock forced conservative elites to consider an alliance with the Nazis. They believed they could control Hitler, using his popularity to dismantle the Weimar system. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. The moment was marked by triumphant parades and torchlight processions in Berlin. The transition from democracy to dictatorship was executed with ruthless speed and precision. Just weeks later, the Reichstag building, the German parliament, was engulfed in flames. Hitler immediately blamed a communist plot and persuaded Hindenburg to sign the Reichstag fire decree. This decree suspended civil liberties, effectively beginning the totalitarian era in Germany. With political opposition stifled, Hitler pushed for the passage of the Enabling Act. The act allowed the chancellor to pass laws without parliamentary or presidential approval. With its passage, the democratic Weimar Republic was formally dead. All political parties, except the Nazis, were dissolved or banned within 6 months. Hitler now turned his attention inward, consolidating power within his own ranks. The SA, led by Ernst Röhm, had become too large and ambitious, threatening the Wehrmacht. In June 1934, Hitler ordered the purge of the SA leadership in the Night of the Long Knives. Röhm and hundreds of others were brutally murdered by the SS, ensuring the loyalty of the army. When President Hindenburg died in August 1934, Hitler abolished the office of president. He merged the roles of chancellor and president, proclaiming himself Führer, the absolute leader. Every soldier and civil servant was required to swear a personal allegiance to him. The groundwork for total control was complete. The focus shifted to rearmament. Defying the Versailles Treaty, conscription was reintroduced and military spending soared. Internally, the regime intensified its persecution of Jewish citizens. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws stripped German Jews of their citizenship and rights. These acts codified racial hatred into the very legal fabric of the nation. In 1936, Hitler took his first international gamble, sending troops into the demilitarized Rhineland. France and Britain protested but took no military action, confirming Hitler's assessment of their weakness. This success bolstered his domestic support and his belief in his own destiny. He began openly planning for the acquisition of Lebensraum in Eastern Europe. In March 1938, German troops marched into Austria, executing the Anschluss, Union. Hitler's next target was the Sudetenland, the German-speaking border regions of Czechoslovakia. He manufactured a crisis, claiming the German population there was being persecuted. The Munich Conference in September 1938 brought European leaders to the brink of war. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain chose a path of appeasement. Czechoslovakia was abandoned, allowing Germany to occupy the Sudetenland unhindered. The appeasement policy proved a disaster. Hitler took the rest of Czechoslovakia 6 months later. Britain and France finally realized the grave mistake and guaranteed the sovereignty of Poland. Hitler was undeterred. He sought a non-aggression pact with his ideological enemy, the Soviet Union. The pact secretly agreed to divide Eastern Europe, ensuring Hitler faced no Eastern Front. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, marking the beginning of World War II. The invasion utilized blitzkrieg, lightning war, rapid coordinated attacks by air and armor. Britain and France, honoring their pledge, declared war on Germany 2 days later. Poland fell quickly. Hitler's military genius appeared unstoppable. In April 1940, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway to secure strategic naval bases. In May 1940, the main attack launched through the Low Countries, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The Allied armies were trapped and pushed back toward the coast at Dunkirk. Just 6 weeks after the invasion began, France surrendered to Hitler. Hitler was now master of Western Europe, seemingly invincible. His focus shifted to Britain, planning Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of the island nation. The Battle of Britain was fought entirely in the air, a duel between the Luftwaffe and the RAF. Britain, led by Winston Churchill, refused to yield, inflicting heavy losses on the German Air Force. Unable to secure air superiority, Hitler postponed the invasion indefinitely, his first significant setback. He returned to his ultimate goal, the destruction of Bolshevism and the conquest of Lebensraum. On June 22, 1941, Operation Barbarossa commenced, the massive invasion of the Soviet Union. It was the largest military invasion in history, involving over 3 million Axis troops. But Hitler failed to capture Moscow before the onset of the brutal Russian winter. Meanwhile, the systematic murder of Jews was escalating into industrialized genocide. In January 1942, the Wannsee Conference finalized the plans for the final solution. Millions of people, Jews, Roma, disabled, and political opponents, were transported to death camps. The Holocaust represents the darkest chapter of Hitler's ideological commitment to racial purity. The tide began to turn decisively at the Battle of Stalingrad in late 1942. The German Sixth Army was encircled and annihilated, a devastating blow to the Wehrmacht. Hitler's refusal to allow tactical retreats cost hundreds of thousands of lives. The Axis position weakened further as Allied forces invaded North Africa and Italy. The continuous bombing campaign by the Allies began to cripple Germany's industrial capacity. Hitler became increasingly withdrawn, relying on intuition over military logic. Discontent grew within the German military and political elite. On July 20, 1944, a group of officers attempted to assassinate Hitler using a briefcase bomb. The attempt failed, and Hitler launched a brutal purge, executing thousands of suspected traitors. The Soviet steamroller continued to advance rapidly from the east. In the winter of 1944, Hitler launched a last desperate gamble, the Battle of the Bulge. It achieved temporary gains, but exhausted Germany's final strategic reserves. By early 1945, the war was brought home to the German Reich itself. Hitler retreated permanently into his subterranean bunker, the Führer bunker, beneath Berlin. He issued increasingly delusional orders, moving divisions that no longer existed. As Soviet forces closed in, he ordered the total destruction of German infrastructure and industry. Albert Speer, his Minister of Armaments, defied the order, recognizing the need to preserve the nation. The Battle of Berlin was a brutal, street-by-street fight against overwhelming Soviet power. Hitler remained detached, marrying his longtime mistress, Eva Braun, in the bunker. He dictated his final political testament, blaming the war on international Jewry and his generals. Learning of Mussolini's death, Hitler resolved to take his own life to avoid capture. On April 30, 1945, Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide together. Their bodies were immediately burned by loyal staff in the Chancellery Garden, adhering to his final instructions. The war in Europe officially ended days later, with Germany's unconditional surrender. The true scale of the horror inflicted by his regime was revealed to the world. Hitler's ambition resulted in an estimated 50 to 80 million deaths globally. His legacy is synonymous with genocide, tyranny, and the utter failure of human leadership. The world emerged from the shadow of the Third Reich, forever changed, burdened by remembrance. The history of Hitler is a perpetual warning against the seductive power of hatred and the dangers of complacency.